One of the most dangerous lies people believe is that their value is based on other people's opinions, that their worth can be negotiated based on the room they're in, the number of followers they have, the degree they hold, or the revenue they generated last month. But let me be crystal clear, your value is not determined by external metrics, it's embedded in your very being. You were created with purpose. You were born with inherent greatness. That means your value was set before you ever took your first breath. But here's the problem. Most people walk through life like spiritual orphans begging for scraps of validation instead of standing in the authority of who they really are. They discount themselves before anyone else gets the chance to. They show up to the negotiation table already convinced they're not worth much. You can't expect the market to value you if you don't value yourself. If you walk like you're of age, talk like you're unsure, and then price yourself like you're replaceable, guess what? People will believe you. Because the world responds to how you present yourself. And the way you present yourself is directly tied to what you believe about yourself. Let me take it deeper. Value is not the same as cost. You can charge $10,000 for a service and still operate from a $10 mindset. Or you can charge $1,000 and carry yourself like you're a $1 million solution. The dollar amount isn't what defines your worth. The belief behind it does. People don't pay high prices for products, they pay high prices for certainty. When you know you're the answer to a problem, you don't have to explain your price, you embody your price. Too many people try to increase their income without increasing their self-image. You cannot outperform your own perception of yourself. That's why the most important sale you'll ever make isn't to your client, it's to yourself. If you don't buy into your value, no one else will. And understand this, when you truly grasp your value, you stop chasing people who don't see it. You stop shrinking to make other people comfortable. You stop lowering your standards just to be liked or accepted. You stop settling for less just because it's familiar. You don't compromise your value, you command it. You don't lower your frequency, you raise your standard. And you do it unapologetically. Your value is non-negotiable. It's not up for debate. It doesn't fluctuate with your emotions, your mistakes, or your current circumstances. It's fixed, permanent, unshakable. But the question is, do you believe it? You've been taught your whole life to raise your hand, wait your turn, and ask for permission. In school, in church, at your job, you were conditioned to believe that authority comes from outside of you, that someone else gets to decide when you're ready, when you're qualified, when you're allowed to rise. But let me tell you the truth that most people never figure out. Permission is a trap. And it's designed to keep you in place. It's one of the most subtle and dangerous forms of control because it doesn't look like oppression, it looks like order. It looks like being polite, like being patient, like being realistic. But what it really is a cage dressed up like common sense. You want to launch the business, but you're waiting for a mentor to validate your idea. You want to raise your prices, but you're waiting for a client to tell you it's okay. You want to speak, coach, lead, but you're still hoping someone will tap you on the shoulder and say, now it's your time. But here's the hard truth. No one's coming. No one's going to show up one day and hand you a crown. No one's going to knight you with greatness. If you don't give yourself the green light, you'll sit at the red one for the rest of your life. And let's be real, most of the people you're waiting on don't even see your vision. They don't get it. They weren't assigned to it. They weren't built to carry it. So why would you wait for approval from people who can't even understand what you're trying to build? You're delaying your destiny for opinions that don't matter, applause that won't last, and permission that was never needed. Let's go deeper. The reason permission feels necessary is because somewhere along the way, you stopped trusting your own voice. You learned to second guess your instincts, to suppress your boldness, to play small in rooms that needed your full presence. And now you're stuck in this loop, hesitating, holding back, hoping someone else will tell you that you're enough. But here's the catch: they can't give you what you refuse to claim. Power doesn't flow to people who wait. It flows to people who decide, who move, who act, who declare their worth and walk in it before the world ever agrees. You don't rise by asking, you rise by deciding. And you've got to make a decision that you will no longer wait for permission from people who haven't paid the price you've paid, haven't seen the vision you've seen, and don't carry the call that you carry. Permission is a socially acceptable excuse to stay stuck. It's fear in disguise. It's procrastination pretending to be wisdom. But if you want to shift your life, elevate your business, and walk in authority, you've got to kill that mindset at the root. Because the longer you wait for someone to give you a seat at the table, the longer you delay realizing you were meant to build your own table. You cannot change what you do not own. That's the bottom line. As long as you're blaming someone else, your boss, your parents, your ex, the economy, the algorithm, you are handing them the keys to your future. And let me ask you this: why would you let the very people or systems that hurt you be in charge of your healing? Why would you give your power to the very thing that kept you stuck? Ownership isn't just about responsibility, it's about reclaiming your authority. It's about standing flat-footed and saying, this is my life, my results are mine, my outcomes are mine. And if I don't like what I see, I'm not waiting on the world to fix it. I'm going to change it. But let's be honest, that's not how most people operate. Most people would rather be victims of their circumstances than victors over them. Why? Because blame feels better than responsibility. Blame is easy. It's convenient. It keeps you comfortable. Because as long as it's someone else's fault, you don't have to do anything about it. You get to stay exactly where you are, doing exactly what you've been doing while telling yourself a story about why it's not your fault. But here's the problem with that. As long as you avoid responsibility, you avoid transformation. You can't fix what you won't face, and you can't shift what you won't own. Ownership is the price of growth. It's the prerequisite for real, lasting change. Until you say, I'm the one who created this reality, you'll never tap into your ability to create a different one. Let me tell you what ownership really looks like. It looks like showing up to your business even when it's not producing yet, because you understand your discipline determines your destiny. It looks like acknowledging that if your bank account doesn't look how you want it to, it's not because money is evil or capitalism is broken. It's because you haven't learned how to create, package, and deliver value at a high enough level yet. It looks like realizing that if your relationships are toxic or your habits are destructive, you are the common denominator in every one of those situations, and that's not condemnation, that's liberation, because if you're the problem, you're also the solution. Ownership is not about guilt, it's about growth. It's not about beating yourself up, it's about building yourself up. It's the shift from why is this happening to me to what is this trying to teach me? It's the moment you stop outsourcing your success and start insourcing your power. You realize nobody's coming to save you not because people don't care, but because it's not their assignment. It's yours. And don't get it twisted, ownership is not about control, it's about clarity. You may not control every circumstance, but you do control how you show up in it. You do control how you respond. You do control how long you stay down after life hits you. Ownership says, even if it wasn't my fault, it's still my responsibility to rise. People think success is about information, but it's not. It's about transformation. And transformation doesn't come from hearing something once. It comes from hearing it so many times, doing it so consistently, practicing it so repeatedly that it gets into your subconscious and becomes part of who you are. See, repetition doesn't just create mastery, it creates identity. You don't rise to the level of your intentions, you fall to the level of your pattern. You've been trained to chase newness, new strategy, new platform, new routine. But it's not the new thing that produces results, it's the old thing done with a new level of commitment. Consistency isn't sexy, but it's sacred. Discipline is the bridge between desire and destiny. If you want breakthrough, stop asking what else should I do and start asking what should I do again. There are some things you've already learned that could make you rich if you just repeated them enough, some lessons you've already received that could free you from the cycles you're stuck in if you didn't abandon them too soon. But because it didn't work in a week, or because it felt boring, or because your emotions didn't get instant gratification, you walked away from the very thing that had the power to shift your life. The truth is, most people don't fail because they're doing the wrong thing. They fail because they stopped doing the right thing too early. Repetition isn't just about practice, it's about rewiring. Every time you speak the truth over your life, every time you take action in alignment with your goals, every time you show up when it's hard, you're reshaping your identity. You're telling your nervous system, this is who we are now. Because repetition trains your belief system, and belief always precedes behavior. The problem is most people are rehearsing the wrong thing. They're repeating fear, repeating lack, repeating excuses, repeating the same internal dialogue that's been sabotaging them for years. Then they wonder why their life doesn't change. If you want different results, you've got to repeat different truths. You've got to saturate your mind with the reality you want until it becomes more familiar than the dysfunction you've been living in. Because nothing changes until your thinking changes, and your thinking doesn't change until you submit it to repetition. That's how the human brain works. That's how faith works. That's how transformation works. Repetition is the training ground of revelation. You don't get clarity by dabbling. You don't get confidence by dabbling. You don't get power by dabbling. You get it by doing the thing over and over until you no longer wonder if it works, because you've become the proof that it does. Repetition takes it from theory to testimony, from concept to character, from something you say to something you embody. Inside of you, there are two voices always speaking. One that wants to keep you safe and one that wants to make you great. One is a critic, the other is a coach. And whichever one you listen to the most becomes the one that leads your life. The problem is too many people have built deep intimacy with their inner critic and have no relationship with their inner coach. They've spent years memorizing lies and moments rehearsing their limitations, but haven't given themselves the space to speak the truth out loud long enough to believe it. The inner critic is subtle. It sounds like reason. It sounds like caution. It sounds like that familiar whisper that says, "You're not ready yet. Who do you think you are? You failed before, remember?" It shows up every time you try to stretch, every time you try to step into something bigger, every time you try to step into purpose. That voice drags up your past, your insecurities, and every piece of evidence it can find to convince you that you should stay small, stay hidden, stay quiet, stay safe. But what that voice calls safety is really sabotage. Because here's what the inner critic doesn't tell you. Staying small won't protect you. It'll drain you. Hiding your voice won't make you more accepted. It'll make you invisible. Playing it safe doesn't keep you from pain. It just guarantees you'll experience a different kind of pain. The pain of regret. The pain of what if. The pain of living life at half power while pretending you're content. The voice you feed the most becomes the one that controls your future. So you've got to learn to interrupt the inner critic. You've got to stop letting that voice finish its sentence. You've got to catch it in the act, mid-lie, and confront it with truth. You've got to stand up in your own mind and say, that's not who I am anymore. That's not my story anymore. That's not the truth anymore. Because until you correct your internal dialogue, you will continue to create a life that reflects your internal dysfunction. And that's where the inner coach comes in. The inner coach isn't loud, but it's firm. It speaks in truth, not fear. It reminds you of what's possible. It calls you to a higher standard. It doesn't flatter, it fortifies. It's the voice that tells you, get back up. You've got more in you. This isn't the end. Keep going, even when it hurts. Don't shrink. You were born to stretch. And the more you tune into that voice, the more it begins to rewrite the script of your identity. Not just what you do, but who you are becoming. You weren't created to be ruled by a critic that's living rent-free in your own head. That voice wasn't placed in you. It was planted by people, experiences, traumas, and failures that you never fully processed. But just because it was planted doesn't mean it has to stay rooted. You have the authority to evict it, to overwrite it, to shut it down and turn up the volume on truth, because the truth is not just powerful, it's transformational, but only when it's repeated, believed, and spoken back to every lie that tries to keep you bound. The inner critic thrives in silence, but the inner coach gets stronger every time you open your mouth and speak life to yourself, every time you declare who you really are, every time you remind yourself of what you carry, every time you rehearse your calling instead of your fears. You've got to coach yourself through the moments that used to crush you. You've got to become the voice that you needed when you were most broken. Because if you don't learn how to talk to yourself, you will always be at the mercy of the thoughts that talk at you. You don't choose yourself once and then ride that wave for life. You choose yourself every single day, in every room, on every call, with every decision, in every moment where doubt creeps in every situation where the old you wants to take the lead again. Choosing yourself is not a one-time act. It's a repeated, conscious, deliberate decision to show up as who you are becoming, not who you've been. Some people think choosing yourself is just about confidence, but it's deeper than that. It's about identity. It's about declaring, I am worthy of the vision I carry. I am equipped for the level I'm stepping into. I am no longer waiting to be selected. I have already selected me. And not just when it feels good. Not just when the momentum is high or the sales are rolling in or the applause is loud, but in the silence, in the setbacks, in the obscurity, in the times when no one is clapping, no one is calling, and everything in your mind is telling you to retreat. That's when the real choice gets made. Because let's be honest, life will test your decision to choose yourself. There will be days when it feels easier to default to smallness, when fear disguises itself as logic, when the pressure to conform sounds like being realistic, when voices around you question your direction, your timing, your pricing, your message, and in those moments, you'll have to decide again and again and again. You'll have to stand in the face of rejection and not shrink. You'll have to look discouragement in the eye and still move forward. You'll have to walk into rooms where you feel like an imposter and remind yourself that you were sent, not suggested. You'll have to silence the memory of past failures that try to whisper, "This will end like last time," and choose instead to believe that this time is different because you are different. You'll have to learn how to hold the weight of your calling even when you feel unqualified, because choosing yourself isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. It's not about pretending you have it all together, it's about showing up because you're committed to growing into the person who does. And the truth is, most people never experience the fullness of their potential, not because they lack talent or intelligence or opportunity, but because they keep abandoning themselves. They keep negotiating with fear. They keep seeking external validation to feel internal certainty. They keep looking for someone else to tell them it's okay to be powerful. But choosing yourself means taking your hand off the doorknob of mediocrity and locking the door behind you. It means burning the backup plan, shutting down the escape route, and deciding that you are the one. No excuses, no apologies, no hesitation. Choosing yourself shows up in how you speak about your vision when no one else is listening. It shows up in how you set boundaries, how you price your offer, how you prepare when no one's watching. It shows up in how you handle failure, not as a reflection of your worth, but as a refinement of your wisdom. It shows up in your consistency, in your resilience, in your refusal to bow to the version of you that's addicted to being liked more than being legendary. Because choosing yourself isn't loud. It doesn't need an audience. It's not always visible, but it is always powerful. It's the decision behind every breakthrough, the fuel behind every comeback, the root of every success that doesn't make sense on paper, but makes perfect sense